Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
We're talking about a really elite athlete for this program, as we did in day one. Her name is Naomi Osaka, and she's a very, very good tennis player. I think she's ranked number 2 in the world. That's pretty darn good, if you ask me. She's only, I think, 23. She's very young, very talented. And we found out in day one that she was playing in the French Open and didn't want to participate in the press conference after the match and declined to do so. She was fined a large amount of money. $15,000 is a lot of money. But she was willing to pay that. But she could see that the press kept giving her too much attention and it was taking away from her fellow players. So she withdrew from the tournament entirely. Now, some of the players were definitely on her side. Others said, hey, get a grip, lady. If you want to participate with, in the professional league, you've got to do everything that we all do. People pay a lot of money to go see the games or matches, and they want to hear from the players after the match. And the only way they can really do that is through a press conference. So,
right. So this is something, of course, all of you can debate amongst yourselves. Is she right there? Do these press conferences, do they actually have something to do with tennis? Or should people just play the game and forget about meeting with reporters? But again, as I said, that's something you all need to talk about yourselves. And let's continue talking about this subject. Let's listen to today's lesson and learn some more.
Naomi Osaka is not alone in her opinions about press conferences. All it takes is a few minutes browsing YouTube to find clips of exhausted athletes snapping at reporters' rude questions. To many athletes, press conferences feel like a waste of time, especially when journalists don't take the time to devise thoughtful questions. Many take the easy road and ask absurd, repetitive questions, often without consideration for the athlete's feelings. Some journalists seem to forget athletes are humans with complex emotions, regardless of their immense skill. Osaka is currently ranked 2nd in the world in tennis. Her athletic abilities are beyond reproach. She is also recognized as a humorous, articulate, and accommodating speaker with exemplary sportsmanship. However, she says that since her remarkable win in the 2018 U.S. Open, she has suffered long bouts of depression. Osaka isn't alone in her struggle, though. She has supporters, many of whom are speaking out. Martina Navratilova, a tennis star who was active in the 1980s, tweeted that athletes are taught to take care of their bodies, but added that perhaps the mental and emotional aspect gets short shrift. While many athletes have adapted to the overwhelming post-match media attention, it's crucial that Osaka's point not be overlooked. Mental health is a serious matter for professional athletes. Press conferences can be a great way for an athlete to share their emotions regarding just completed matches or get into the technical details of their sport. However, they can also be a source of intense pressure, and sports organizations must take their athletes' overall health into account. Fortunately, due to the attention Osaka's withdrawal has attracted to the issue, both the International Tennis Federation and the Women's Tennis Association will be launching reviews of current regulations and practices.
Okay, let's continue to talk about Naomi Osaka. And I guess the controversy that started around her last summer when first she refused to participate in a press conference or press conferences at the French Open, and then later she withdrew from the tournament itself because she felt she was getting too much attention and she wanted the attention to be on her fellow athletes because there was so much media buzz about what was going around what was going on with her. So we begin today's lesson by saying Naomi Osaka is not alone in her opinions about press conferences. Okay, she's not the only person who has something to say about these press conferences that players are required to attend at these various tennis tournaments all year round. Okay, so other athletes have voiced their opinions as well.
Yeah, and I think all of the professional leagues will fine a player if they don't speak to the press after the game. Because they really do want those ratings, and the press are an important part of professional athletics. So, yeah, a lot of people feel the same way. It says here, all you have to do is get onto YouTube and browse around for a bit, and you'll find clips or short video clips of exhausted athletes snapping at reporters' rude questions. If you snap at someone, you lose your temper and you kind of answer back in a very angry, short way because someone has really ticked you off or made you angry. Sometimes it's because you're really tired, you don't feel well, or the question is just ridiculous, or it's too personal. A lot of our listeners know I've always liked the Yankees. And when Derek Jeter was on the Yankees team, he would always answer with the most boring answers possible. And all of the journalists realized they would never get him to answer anything that was interesting.
Did he do that on purpose or something?
Oh, yeah, on purpose. The journalists want to get something that really stands out that will help their paper or their TV news station to get more viewers.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because every time I watch those sports press conferences, it seems like the athletes don't really say much. They say, how could you have won that game? Well, if I would have practiced more and played harder, then maybe I could have won. Okay, that's basically what they say every time.
Yeah.
Or if it's a team sport, yeah, we could work better as a team. We'll have to work on that in practice and things like that. But that's basically true of all team sports. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to get athletes to say interesting things. And again, we've got people getting mad at reporters. Just do a search on YouTube and find athletes and reporters, and you'll probably find lots of press conferences where the athletes are snapping at the rude questions from those reporters.
And of course, that's exactly what the reporters want.
Yeah, so if you're an athlete, don't fall for that. Just kind of smile and look away and point to the next reporter or something like that. But to many athletes, press conferences feel like a waste of time, especially when journalists don't take the time to devise thoughtful questions. So athletes are probably going, I just finished this game. Now I've got to go to this stupid press conference. What a waste of time. They're going to ask a bunch of stupid questions that I've been asked thousands of times before. And they're going to try to get me to react or something or throw my racket at them or something like that. And they're very frustrated, I suppose, because the journalists or the reporters don't take the time to come up with some thoughtful questions or some useful questions. These reporters just don't ask them any questions that they haven't heard before. It's always the same thing over and over again.
Right. Really, it is. Devise means to make something up, to put something together, to construct it. So, yeah, most of the questions are pretty boring. Now, many take the easy road and ask absurd, which means stupid, ridiculous, repetitive questions. Repetitive just means something that's done over and over and over again. Repeat is a word that you're very familiar with. Repetitive is an adjective. Repetitive questions, boring questions, absurd questions. That's what usually happens. Although there are some good reporters out there, and you can always tell if the athlete respects them because they take the time to answer thoughtfully. They don't just give them the same boring thing, except Derek Jeter. He didn't care who was asking him. He would always be very boring. So a lot of times these reporters don't really take the athlete's feelings into consideration. They don't think, oh, wow, they must feel really bad or be really down because they just lost, or wow, they just injured themselves. I bet it's really hard for them right now. Or they must feel great. Yeah, I'm still going to ask a mean question, though. The reporters just want to get that soundbite. A soundbite is a video clip that they can use on TV news or online. Or if they're a newspaper reporter, they want to get that great quote that will sell their paper.Yep,
and these journalists seem to forget that athletes are human beings with these complex emotions, regardless of their immense skill. So here, regardless just means even though this is the case. So, for example, I could say, we're going to go hiking in the mountains regardless of the weather. No matter what the weather is like, we're still going to go hiking. If it's hot and sunny, if it's cold and rainy, we're still going hiking in the mountains. We're going hiking regardless of the weather.And yes, indeed, the athletes just kind of forget that, the reporters, they forget that the athletes are human beings and they're not really taking these things into consideration. Even though they have these great skills, they kind of forget that these athletes are human beings as well.
Oh, they definitely do, don't they?Well, one person who always is thoughtful is our Chinese teacher. We're going to listen for a bit, and then we'll be back to continue.Hello
everyone, 大家好，我是派老师。今天讲解的是10月份 Unit 10 Naomi Osaka takes a stand for athletes' mental health 第二天的课程。这个单元介绍了网球女将 Naomi Osaka 大阪直美，为了自己的心理健康，在法国网球公开赛期间拒绝参与赛后记者会，后续又为了不想因为个人决定导致媒体报道失焦，毅然决然宣布退赛。前一天的课程在最后一段说明，并不是所有人都认同他的做法，包括网协的行政人员，甚至于其他球员都有所质疑。而在第二天课程一开始，则从反面的角度出发，说明有些记者的提问的确有问题，新闻专业素养不够，借此说明 Osaka 拒绝赛后记者会不是没有道理的。接下来我们一起复习一下文章第二天的学习重点吧。第一段一样是主题句开头的写作方法，同学可以好好的参考，并且呢，在自己练习英文写作的时候，好好的运用。主题句是 Naomi Osaka is not alone in her opinions about press conferences， 并不是只有大阪直美对于记者会有这样的想法。好，我们看一下第二句 All it takes 这边。好，这里呢有一个字 snapping， 请同学画起来。snap at， 这个 snap 是什么意思啊？其实就是突然间失去自我控制。我们中文不是会这样说理智断线吗？就是因为记者问了一些粗鲁无礼的问题，或者有些人会说白目的问题，因此呢，很多的运动员就会对记者暴怒，理智断线。好，那接下来请同学看文中说到，有些记者其实他们怎么样？他们投机取巧，没有踏踏实实的做功课。Many take the easy road， 这里请画起来。其实啊，英文当中还有一种讲法叫做 cut corners。cut corners 就是抄捷径，对，就是角落 C-O-R-N-E-R-S cut corners。有些人会投机取巧。那再接着，我们往下看到记者的问题到底有什么问题呢？有些问题很荒谬 absurd， 有一些呢甚至于是重复的 repetitive。那多数时候，他们其实根本没有顾及到运动员的感受。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about elite athlete, tennis player Naomi Osaka, and her stand for athletes' mental health. She's taking a stand. She's standing up for athletes who don't always like to participate in press conferences, sometimes because the reporters have rude questions or repetitive questions or even stupid questions. I don't blame her, but other people, even some of her own fellow players, think that That's just part of being a professional athlete. You have to be willing to sit after a game or a match and listen to the questions coming at you from reporters or journalists. So when we left you, we were talking about how some of the journalists really don't think about the athletes themselves, that they are human beings. They have a lot of emotions, and they probably are dealing with a lot of emotions right after a game, especially if they lost. I always thought it was so hard and so unfair for a team if they lost the championship game, to have to talk to the reporters afterwards. Because if it were me, I would just want to go away and cry, of course.
Exactly. So, yes, again, as you said, she's currently ranked second in the world, and her athletic abilities are beyond reproach. So, remember we talked about the word athlete. That's the person, and the adjective is athletic. Okay, so she's got great athletic abilities. Everybody knows this. She has proven this by winning various tournaments. So, of course, her abilities are beyond reproach. Reproach means doubt or criticism. So if her abilities are beyond reproach, that means she cannot be criticized for her athletic abilities. She has proven that she has them, so nobody can doubt that anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that, She is a great athlete. She's very accommodating. We'll talk about that in a minute. But our next vocabulary word is this word articulate. So she's recognized people feel this way about her, that she's funny, she's humorous. Humorous is just a higher level word. Instead of saying he's so funny, you could say, oh, he's so humorous. Usually if we're just speaking to each other casually, we would use funny. But, she's got a sense of humor, you could say. She's articulate. If someone's articulate, they express themselves very freely, fluently. You probably have heard people on TV do a lot of this. Well, I just did it myself. Don't know what to say. A lot of these athletes don't feel comfortable or even confident, but some are very articulate. Some are very smart. Although being articulate and smart don't often, it doesn't mean they go together naturally. It depends. So articulate just meaning you're able to freely speak your mind. You can express yourself clearly, distinctly, and fluently. So so she's got some really good points here. So she's athletic. She's tremendously talented. She's funny, articulate. And what's the last one, Tom?
She's accommodating, and if you're accommodating, that means you get along well with other people. If people have requests or if they have problems, you're more than willing to help out. So if people are having discussions and then they have problems and stuff, she's there ready to help, ready to offer advice and things like that. And she's also known for her exemplary sportsmanship. Exemplary means having to do with an example. So basically, if you're looking for a good example of sportsmanship, hey, just look for Naomi Osaka videos and you'll see examples of her being a good sportsman. So she's exemplary of that. She's a model citizen when it comes to sportsmanship. So she's quite good in all these areas. But here it says, however, she says that since her remarkable win in the 2018 US Open, she has suffered long bouts of depression. I think I remember that tournament, the 2018 US Open. I think the final was between her and Serena Williams. And there was some controversy regarding that final match there, which I won't get into right now. But that was indeed a remarkable win because it's not easy to beat Serena Williams, especially if you're as new to the sport as Naomi Osaka was at the time. So that was a staggering achievement. That was a remarkable win. But since then, she says she has suffered long bouts of depression. So depression, of course, is when you feel really sad about things. And it could be general feelings of sadness you have when you're when your poodle dies, or when your grandmother gets sick or something like that. But if we're talking about clinical depression, where you feel this way all the time when there really isn't necessarily anything bad going on in your life, then that could be described as clinical depression. And she was suffering long bouts of depression. I assume it was the clinical kind.
Now, about here, B-O-U-T just means a short period of some sort of intense activity. You could have a bout of flu, a severe bout of flu. We also use bout to talk about a boxing match. But here it just means a short period of time, bouts of. So on and off, she would feel this depression. She would feel depressed. Would be the adjective form. Depression is the noun form. So Osaka isn't alone in her struggle, though. She has supporters, people who agree with her stand on this, her opinion, many of whom are speaking out. For one is Martina Navratilova. I bet a lot of our listeners don't know who that is. She was around in the 1980s. She was very, very successful. She tweeted, so she was using the social media platform Twitter. She tweeted that athletes are taught to take care of their bodies, for sure, right? It's part of their job. But added that, and these are her exact words, perhaps the mental and emotional aspect gets short shrift. Getting short shrift is, these two words together mean you just neglect something, you don't pay enough attention to it. I was curious because I've never seen the word shrift used on its own. We're not saying shift here, guys. It's shrift. Get short shrift. You'll only hear those two words together. Shrift actually is from long ago in the Middle Ages. It was confessing to a priest that you'd sinned before they executed you or killed you. We don't use it like that anymore. So getting short shrift, you just didn't get enough time. You needed more attention. You know, sometimes the amount of time I give to my family in America gets short shrift because the people in Taiwan are closer to me, nearer to me. If they need something, I hear them first. And sometimes I feel bad about that. You don't want to give anyone short shrift.
Or if you're a career woman or a career man, your family might get short shrift because you have to work overtime so much and you don't spend as much time with your kids as you should or as you would like to. So this is a good point here, of course. If you're an athlete, you work on your body, but of course there can be great mental pressure in these tournaments with the press conferences and the huge crowds. So maybe there should be some emphasis placed on the mental aspect as well. And here it goes on to say, while many athletes have adapted to the overwhelming post-match media attention, it's crucial that Osaka's point not be overlooked. Mental health is a serious matter for professional athletes. So yes, many athletes do get used to this. They adapt to the post-match media attention, and we're describing it as being overwhelming, which means it's just too much. It's just too much to deal with.
Yeah, sometimes things can get overwhelming in your life if you have too many tasks that you need to finish, or you just have too many things you're not getting done. You can feel a lot of stress with that. You can be overwhelmed with something. Many times I'm overwhelmed with line messages from clients and I can't get back to everybody. So yeah, you have to be pretty strong to deal with all the media attention as a professional athlete. So it's a serious matter. It says press conferences can be a great way for an athlete to share their emotions. It says also they can be a source of intense pressure. You can imagine facing the whole world after you've had a game. And sports organizations must take their athletes' overall health into account. Overall just means including everything. You need to look at everything, not just the physical, not just the mental, not just the emotional, everything together. Take everything into account. That's a phrase we often use. Take something into account. Overall just means everything. So fortunately, due to the attention Osaka's withdrawal has attracted, you know what they've decided to do is that the International Tennis Federation and the Women's Tennis Association are going to be reviewing current regulations and practices, and maybe they'll make some changes that'll help all the athletes.
And maybe the sport will improve as a result. It seems that this kind conversation is long overdue. And thanks to Naomi there, they can start talking about this. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
第二段课文让我们更进一步了解大阪直美。第一句 Osaka is currently ranked second in the world in tennis. 好，这里我们可以学到排名的讲法。She is ranked number 2 in the world in tennis. 接下来请看到 beyond reproach 这个片语。Reproach 是责难、指责的意思，而 beyond reproach 是无可挑剔 perfect。接下来第二个句子 She is also recognized as a humorous, articulate, and accommodating speaker. 这句话的意思是她还受到大家公认是幽默、善于表达、乐于助人的讲者，具有堪称典范的体育精神。Be recognized as， 那我们可以理解成就是公认的。接着后面的 articulate 是个形容词，表示能言善道、口才辩己的。再来第三个 accommodating， 这里呢一样是形容词，可以解释为通情达理、随和的、给人方便的。接下来下一个形容词是 exemplary， 是可以作为模范的。比方说可以作为别人学习的行为 exemplary behavior， 或者呢这个表现非常的好，值得别人学习 exemplary performance。 好，我们请看第三个句子 however 这个句子，请同学看到 long bouts of depression a bout of。 好，这里的 a bout of 就是可以用来修饰一场病。比方说 The actor had a long bout of illness last year, so he didn't make any movies。 这名演员去年病了好一阵子，什么电影也没拍。接下来请看第四个句子 Osaka isn't alone in her struggle. She isn't alone in her struggle， 就表示大阪直美并不是在孤军奋斗。接下来我们看第五个句子 She has supporters, many of whom are speaking out。 请同学特别注意这个 speaking out 就是公开声援。那其实第四句和第五句两个呢，可以说就是换句话说，这是我们写文章的时候呢常常会做的，就进一步的去说明，从不同的角度来说明。再来请同学特别注意到后面的这个 whom， many of whom 的 whom 所代替的就是前面的 supporters。 再来请看到这里最后一个句子 She added that perhaps the mental and emotional aspect gets short shrift。Get short shrift 这句话的意思是没有受到重视， Their mental health is given little attention， 是这个意思。好，没有受到重视。以上是我们针对第二天课文内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
Thanks for joining us, guys. We hope you enjoyed learning more about Naomi Osaka and her stand on athletes' mental health. It's a really interesting topic to debate, to discuss. We hope you'll do that with your classmates and with your friends. Good chance to practice English. We hope you'll join us again for English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom.
Bye.
Goodbye.